Hello, beautiful people. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but the rain is beating down on the window just next to me. I love that feeling of coziness, when you're inside or you're tucked up in bed and it's nice and warm. And outside you can hear the rain falling, the wind blowing. It's even better when you're in a tent and you can hear the rain hitting the sides of the tent. And you know that between you and being very cold and wet, you've just got this thin layer of protection. For some reason, it makes it even more cozy. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about yin and yang. We've been living in a period where there's been a lot of yang energy. It's been a time of strong outward energy, a real story of great masculine energy and light. But as we enter this Aquarian age, we're now moving into a time of more yin, a more receptive time, where many people really start to feel a sense of unreality. Perhaps they've lived a life when they've been able to live in their own world, to escape, to hibernate, where they've stayed in their cave and it's been nice and safe. But now as we enter a time of yin, all that escapism has had to be somewhat distilled as the winds of cosmic wisdom arrive, when we really have to ground our stories into the world of form. It's almost like the theory meets the reality, like the Titanic hitting the iceberg, like when the snowflakes fall on the ground, when the seed which is blown in the wind suddenly lands in the place where the mighty oak, which will be born from the seed, will grow. Essentially, this is a scary time for a lot of people because we're having to almost have a reality check and at the same time a big shift in our consciousness. It's a time when stillness comes into its own, and ultimately it's when we find our true selves. I love Pico Ayer's quote when he says, "Home lies in the things that you carry with you everywhere, and not the ones that tie you down." So essentially this is the moment when, if we can look deep enough within, maybe that's through meditation, maybe that's through stillness, maybe that's through accepting the things in our lives that perhaps we've refused to accept over the years. But suddenly we realize that actually, to live our life, to be happy, we don't need much. On the physical level, but also on the spiritual level. What do you take with you when you walk the walk, when you go traveling? Many people travel to escape, to lose ourselves. And then we might learn that when we travel, we have to find ourselves. But ultimately, we travel to open our hearts and to open our eyes, to learn more about the world than what we hear in the newspapers, in the media, on the television, on the internet. We travel to bring what little we can, and in our ignorance and in our knowledge, to those parts of the globe whose riches are differently dispersed. But when we ask ourselves really why we're traveling, seeking, searching, it's to discover the young fools deep down inside ourselves, the child, the inner child, the person within you and the soul within you who can look at the world with those eyes of amazement, awe, astonishment, love. And often we find that when we fall out with our families or we become unhappy with ourselves or our life, it's because we've got ourselves stuck in a rut. As we grow and the people next to us, maybe our families, maybe our greatest friends, if they don't grow at the same rate, we can often become frustrated. We want them to see what we're feeling. We want them to understand that this journey of spirituality, of discovery is magnificent, and how looking at the world through the eyes of the heart, through the eyes of someone who is on a great epic journey, someone who has realized there's something bigger out there. Well, that's the greatest view one could ever ask for. And we look at our friends and we look at our family, and it's like we're stood on the top of a mountain and we've got this incredible view before us of the European Alps or the Himalayas, the Australian outback, of the Grand Canyon. And and they're so close to us, we can almost touch them. But our friends or our family refuse to come and just take those extra few steps just to see this magnificent vista, this panorama which is beyond all our dreams, the greatest view of our lives. And that can be incredibly frustrating. But you know, one of our biggest lessons here is that we can't force someone to look at the world through our eyes. They will do it in their own time. And this is the gift of compassion. If we can look at them and instead of feeling sorry for them, we can just say, wow, I love you. Thank you for showing me where I was or showing me where you are on your journey. I accept that. I forgive you for not taking those extra steps. Maybe one day you will, maybe you never will in this lifetime. But thank you for supporting me and accepting that I've taken these extra few steps to see this view. And one of the great gifts of the yin is that it can teach us to switch off all those things that we feel like we need around us, like watching the news, like fighting the battles with people when they say something we disagree with. If we can learn to stay steadfast in the center of a storm, if we can ground ourselves in nature and have this connection between our inner self and our outer self, the self that everyone else sees, this is an amazing gift. And I know Alan Watts often spoke about the middle way, which is the Buddhist ideal of clinging neither to the left bank of the river nor the right bank, but actually just swimming through the center, going with the current, not treading water, not trying to go in one direction or the other, but just going in the flow, in the tide of life. Often it's very difficult to do that. If there's something you're passionate about, something where deep inside you have a real intensity, that you have to shout loud about it, tell the world. Maybe it was an ambition you had as a youngster. I always wanted to do this. And then suddenly someone's telling you, no, you can't come this way. So you swim even faster and harder in that direction to show them that what you're doing is right. When in fact, what Alan Watts is saying, or what the Buddhists are saying about the middle way is, you'll probably end up getting to that place in a quicker and easier and more beautiful, more graceful way. If you just accept that in that moment, the flow of the river is taking you in another direction. And maybe one day soon, you'll end up going back in the other direction. But at least you'll be doing it in the flow of the river, not fighting against the gravity of life. It might be that we have to integrate more of our inner self within our outer self before we can make that final step to the dream. But if we can see life as a dance rather than a trek up a mountain, then it becomes almost effortless. And when you dance, you never dance in anticipation of the end of the song. Okay, maybe if it's a song you hate. But if you're on the dance floor, you're in the moment, you're loving the vibe, you're hearing the beat, you're connecting your heart, you're putting everything into that moment. And the end of the song is irrelevant. When you're trekking up a mountain, while it can be very enjoyable and you can enjoy the nature en route, you're often looking upwards constantly to see where the summit is and how far away you are. But life isn't like that. If life was like that, we'd be building everything towards our death. But human beings are doing everything to avoid that. Now, it's important that you accept that at some point you're going to reach the summit of that mountain. At some point you're going to die. At some point the song is going to end. But if the focus is on the now, if the focus is on going with the current, if the focus is on turning your inner kite to a place where it can catch the wind, then everything is so much easier because you're not having to put any effort into everything. And perhaps the biggest mistake humans make in this day and age is still believing that mantra that you have to work hard to achieve your dreams, when the opposite is true. Now, I'm not saying to your kids they don't have to work hard. Of course, focus and concentration on what you're trying to achieve is important, But you want to make sure that everything you do in a happy way, that you do in a space that you feel comfortable, because you will do things so much better if you're in a good space. So just because now we're entering a time where there's much more yin doesn't mean we just focus on the yin. In the same way that in the time when there was all that yang energy, we didn't focus on the yang. The whole point is that we stay in the dance between the two. The yang is the southern side or the sunny side of the mountain or the north bank of the river, wherever the sun falls. And the yin, well, that's your shadow. That's where all the treasure lies, if you're willing to go there. Now, I love the way Alan Watts always used to say, now imagine a mountain with only one face. Nobody can. A river with only one bank. Doesn't exist. Well, life, you see, life is a game of now you see it, now you don't. On and off, black and white, left and right, north and south. A wave moves in crests and troughs. There'd be no such thing as a wave if there wasn't the top bit and the bottom bit. Perhaps the greatest example to all of us is water. How does the source of the river meet the estuary? Well, the water flows in whatever direction is the best way for it to find its way down. It won't stop and go, no, I want to go that way. And suddenly look at some huge mountain that it has to climb. Water just flows. It always takes the easiest path. And it's not because it doesn't lack courage. Water is so powerful. And it will always find its way to the next stream, to the river, so that it can eventually find its way to the estuary, to where it meets the ocean, its big brother, the greater version of itself. Essentially, water is doing what all the great feminine energies do. It's looking for that great motherly embrace, so that it can be pulled into that single unity, that great ocean. Now, why are you here on this planet right now? Well, there's a force within this universe that choreographs absolutely everything. And it's found deep inside your heart. There is not one single moment in your life that is not perfectly in harmony with all of creation. You cannot make the wrong decision. You cannot take a wrong turn in the road. You might look back at certain moments in your life and go, why did I do that? Oh, that's so embarrassing. Oh, I can't believe I did that. What a terrible mistake. If I'd have done that, then life would be completely different. Well, the thing is, you're here now, and life is perfect. Your biology determines your perception. Your perception is the measuring stick for your evolutionary frequency. Human awareness is following an evolutionary curve. It began as some kind of primitive form of instinct rooted in your animal origins. But now it's taken a giant leap to where we are right now. And the human journey is very much one of the thinker, the intellectual. This is where humans are right now. But the great awakening, which is starting to happen, is realizing that intellect doesn't lie in the mind. All these scientists and mathematicians and politicians who live very much in their head are suddenly being found out. The great wave of humanity now is taking us to a place where the heart rules, not the head. Now, we need both. We do need to use the mind, the intellect in the head, almost like a dam for water, to harness the heart, to make sure that there is an element of logic to our thinking. If we went with our heart every time, it would be the right decision. But the heart sometimes needs to be guided. But there's another very crucial force that we haven't really talked about much on the sacred pause. And that lies in our belly, in our solar plexus. We talk about intuition. We talk about having a gut feeling. But if we can combine the mind, the heart, and the solar plexus, then we become almost unstoppable. We have to remember that we're not separate from each other. We're all one big movement. It's all about unity. So if you're in an accident or something bad happens to a group of people, if you can think for the group rather than thinking of yourself, that instinct is the very essence of the instinct of the universe. This is your connection with the one. The great leaders in the future will be coming from a very different space, from that space of the heart and the solar plexus. And they will see that the mind is in fact the greatest blind spot of the human species. It prevents us from inhabiting the older instinctive awareness that we used to have. It lives in fight or flight. There's a great fear that takes root in our mind, and that is that we're going in a bad direction, because it comes from a place of survival, where we see ourselves as separate from nature and where we feel this great collective fear. The moment we pull away from the mind, where we can live in a state of trust, of connectedness, suddenly this isolation, this separateness, this survival mode just dissolves. And all our actions come out of the trust, they come out of love. And suddenly we started noticing this synchronicity in everything we do. The numbers that you see, the coincidences of someone coming into our life just at the moment when we need them. You see, our true destiny is to awaken out of our selfishness, to our universality. Those with no sense of the spiritual dimension to life inhabit this state of being lost. And the byproduct of being lost is misery and suffering. But once we connect ourselves with the greater cosmic forces that exist, with all that is, life suddenly has great purpose. You remember who you're meant to be. You don't swim against the tide. You don't fight against the wind. You don't look at someone else in despair, with frustration, with anger. You look at them with compassion. So if someone in your family is just not understanding your journey, they're questioning everything you do, thinking you've gone off the rails, bonkers, joined some crazy cult, believing in something that they can't even see. You just accept that. And when you do accept that and see them as just another aspect of you, perhaps earlier in your journey, or someone who has taken one for the team in this lifetime just to help you to see that we're not all on the same journey, we're not all in the same place. Suddenly, you get given the key which unlocks the door. And you no longer feel dislocated or like the black sheep of the family. But you see even the people who are on a different journey are just another part, another aspect of an even more magical dimension of you. And once you can look at these people with gratitude, with forgiveness, with compassion, with understanding, suddenly you release something inside your DNA, which is almost like a tractor field around you. And it not only unifies the microcosm with the macrocosm, but it also unites matter and spirit, the physical world, with the world that we can't see, but we know is there, the greater force. Every human has magnetic properties. And when we meet these super spiritual gurus, we try and understand why everyone is around and why they've got this real pull of energy, which just warms your spirit, makes you want to be with them. And you see people kissing their feet, stroking their legs, waiting on their every word. These are people who have taken that step. They see everything as one. They're not attached to anything. They've let go of all expectations, particularly the expectations of themselves. That intensity inside them had told them that they had to work, earn money, do this, do that, is gone. Their whole energy field is cleared, and they're like a magnet for everybody, because everyone wants a piece of their beautiful, soft, wispy, succulent energy. They're in the flow. Sailing through the middle way. And these people are the people who realize that it's not male and female, it's not masculine and feminine, it's not yang and yin. But actually the masculine principle is in fact an externalization of the feminine. rather than something separate. Because at the very highest level, there's no such thing as duality. At this heightened level of awareness, mathematics works differently than on the mental level. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, but always in fact makes 3, because only the numbers really exist. That every relationship is really a 3. There's a man, there's a woman, but also there's the couple, the united couple. And a lot of us have this issue that we think that oneness or enlightenment or perfection is something that we have to achieve, something we have to chase, something we have to desire. However, if you think like this, then you're caught within the straight line between 2 points, in that very linear mind mode. The truth is that enlightenment does not take you away from life. It actually places you right in your very heart. The place you've always been. We talk about heaven being some place in the stars, when in fact, it's inside us. And the moment we accept that, we realize there's no journey to take to get there. There's no striving. It's not about striving to achieve something. This isn't a maths exam which we want to pass. This is all about being in the moment. And when you think like that, this unifies all the opposites, ends all the riddles, leaves all the mysteries. Ultimately, it's about letting go, being yourself, accepting. So the next time you feel a little bit dislocated with life, you feel out of sync, or you feel that people really just don't understand, and you judge them for not accepting you and your journey, just try and look at them with compassion. See them as an aspect of you. They're not a reflection of you, but they are an aspect of you, maybe in a different part of your journey, or an activation of the shadow of you that you still haven't really dealt with. And I know it's not easy, but if it was easy, we wouldn't be here in this great curriculum that is the human species on this planet, the great training ground of souls. Don't obsess with getting to the next place. Enjoy the place you're in right now. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find out that the place you're in right now is perfect. Thank you so much for listening. Have a beautiful day. The rain has stopped. Maybe that's a message. Love and peace. Peter.